There's debt, there's destruction.
Global news impacts us.
We have to change the way we live. This is why we need independent media.
Cheers and salutations. Happy Father's Day. Hope all of you are doing well this wonderful Sunday afternoon. My name is Kit Cabello, and this is another special episode of Hard Lens Media. And today, I'm just going to get to the point. We got an outstanding guest, Chicago's very own, from our city, everyone's favorite villain who lives rent-free in their heads. He challenges the establishment system. He is constantly shaking up trouble wherever he goes. And guess what? He's speaking the truth to power all across this country. He has an outstanding comedy tour that's happening. So give it up for the one, the only, Hard Lens Media's good friend, Jimmy Dore from the city of Chicago. Jimmy, welcome. What are your pronouns? What adjectives do you feel like using today?
How about peachy and shaded?
Yeah, fantastic. And it's good to have you back here on our show. So first and foremost, you are right now doing a nationwide tour, visiting various parts of the country. And, you know, I've asked you this question before in the past, especially during the height of the pandemic, during the lockdowns, especially when you started going back out there, doing your tours and so much more. All across this country, we're seeing people getting angry, voicing out disappointment in the two-party system. We're going to see the 2020 election repeat itself in 2024 with potentially Biden versus Trump, or however else the corporate media or the establishment is going to systematically set it up for us to, I guess, give us a choice. When you're doing these shows, because obviously you have your show that's happening on YouTube and streaming on various other platforms, but when you do these shows, these comedy shows in various parts of the country, be it on the West Coast, in the center of the country, on the East Coast, what is the overall audience reaction to when you are speaking, again, the truths that the neoliberal establishment media won't ever talk about?
You know, people are just hungry for the truth. They're so sick, and they trust the corporate media less than they trust politicians, from what some of the polls say. So they're just really hungry for it. And what surprised me, kid? I was in a suburb of Albany, New York, last Saturday there's a 500-seat theater called the Coho's Music Hall, and I just stopped randomly I talked to somebody in the balcony, and he happened to be. I said, what do you do for a living? I felt like doing some crowd work, and he said he used to work for the railroad, and he was a union leader. He was a union leader for a decade, and he quit when they crushed their strike, right? And now he works for Verizon, and he's much happier. And so what, we got to actually having a conversation in front of 500 people about what we need to do about this. And people always want to know, what should we do? What do we do? And in front of a blue collar crowd, old, young, and lefty, righty, libertarian, I said that, we got to do what the truckers did in Canada. We got to get in the streets. We got to shut down Capitol. And before I even got to that, they all just started screaming and cheering. And so I guess the answer to your question is that people are ready. I think they're ready for a real leader. That's not me. I'm a comedian. I'm not a real leader, but I can see what's lacking, and I can see what people want. And I was really surprised by that. I was expecting a lot of that, my crowd, to push back on that, right? And not embrace it, but they're ready. They're ready. They see how they've been lied to and manipulated by the oligarchy, that black is white, up is down, in is out. And even to the point now where they have people like me not believing their climate change narrative, right? To the point where I go, okay, so climate change is a thing and we're all going to die, but you're not going to stop flying around on your private jets. But we do have to shut down the Dutch farmers. We don't have to shut down the 1,000 military bases that the United States has around the world. Isn't that the biggest contributor to global warming and climate change? Isn't it the military-industrial complex? And they just built 3 new military bases in the Philippines a couple of months ago, and they just built a permanent base in Syria. They're still building more. So I don't believe what they're saying we need to do about climate change anymore. That's how bad we've been lied to. That's how bad. Uh, uh, and people feel it, and people are ready. I tell you, that was really a moment for me when I said we got to do what Christian Smalls did in Staten Island. We got to do what the truckers did in in Canada. We got to shut down. And when I before I even got to it, they were cheering. They were on board. These are just regular people, blue collar workers. And so I was really surprised by that. And so I think that's why Christian Smalls was able to organize a bunch of, Trump voters.
Hmm.
A black guy could come in and organize them, a bunch of Trump voters against Jeff Bezos,
Hmm.
right?
Well,
Because what? We share a common enemy,
well,
right?
the thing is, what we are seeing too is that not only is the establishment media lying to us because it assumes that we're too stupid to figure things out. I mean, that's what the media is trying to say to the American people, but also the media is going down this road of not even doing its job. I mean, there was the infamous title from the New York Times where they basically said maybe it's best we don't look into what happened to the Nord Stream pipeline. Don't ask questions, just consume the product. Or either that Rachel Maddow, who's part of MSNBC, an authoritative media source, and then you have CNN's Jake Tapper saying we're not going to air these videos of Trump speaking to his followers. We're going to listen to it and then tell you if you need to see it or not. And it's this environment of constantly hiding the truth. And the people who I've spoken to, and I don't know if this has happened to you, where now everyone's wondering, well, what is really being hidden from us? And as we enter into, we're still in 2023, as we enter into 2024, you're out there amongst the crowd, and obviously you have great award-winning journalists and commentators on your show as well. Is 2024 going to be that election year where maybe people say enough is enough? Maybe we see what could have happened in 2016 if Bernie Sanders didn't sell out, because he had the movement, he had lightning in the bottle. We both saw it in 2016, and I made the foolish assumption that maybe he'd be ready in 2020, and that didn't happen. I don't know. Your thoughts, Jimmy?
The Durham report revealed that MSNBC, CNN, and even most of Fox News and the rest of the corporate media have been lying to the American people for the last 7 years, ever since Trump got elected, about RussiaGate. It was a hoax concocted. This is according to the Durham. There was absolutely no basis for the FBI to launch Crossfire Hurricane, which is the RussiaGate investigation. So what Rachel Maddow has been doing for 5 nights a week for the last 7 years has been a sham, a lie. Everything she said is not true. And they're not correcting it, and they're not apologizing, but they're not going to show Donald Trump. Does anybody believe that the reason why the establishment doesn't want you to hear Donald Trump is because they don't tolerate lies? Is that do you really think that the establishment is upset that a politician is lying in Washington, D.C.? Oh my me. Now everybody's going to do it, I guess. That goddamn Donald Trump. So, of course, that's not what they don't want you to hear the truth. And what they've been doing is lying at the top of their lungs because the establishment doesn't like Donald Trump. The donor class hates him, and he puts an ugly face on empire. Right now, if Donald Trump was doing what Joe Biden is doing currently, saber rattling with 2 nuclear powers, while committing acts of terrorism, like the Nord Stream pipeline, and funding Nazis, literal Nazis, if they couldn't get away with it, but they can get Joe Biden to do it, or Barack Obama to do it, and they can sell that, but they can't sell it with him. The donor class hates him. And so that's why they all do it. That's why MSNBC, CNN, and most of Fox News does it. So Rachel Maddow put out a video explaining to her audience that she wasn't going to show the former president's speech in response to being indicted. She wasn't going to show it because he might lie.
Or use it
that's
at
not how
Jake Tapper with AOC right there next to him, who looks like she was about to cry her fake tears, saying we're not gonna play that video because he's gonna lie too.
the
Because
biggest liar in Washington D.C. has always been Joe Biden, and of course that's just that's isn't it amazing that people actually buy it? That the news media, the people who colored Joe Rogan's skin green for big pharma and lied about ivermectin at the top of their lungs, those are the people who are upset at lies. Really, the people who are bought by the military industrial complex, big pharma, and Wall Street are upset that someone's lying. So that's a and people, they buy it, right? So now what Rachel Maddow is saying is that I'm not going to show you a politician who's lying because your brain is too weak and it might infect it, and then you might go out and vote wrong. So we have powerful brains, better than yours. We can watch the lies and it doesn't affect us in a negative way because we have superpowers. We're better than the regulars. We're not like the poors. And so we'll pre-read the news for you. And then we'll let you know if there's anything that's newsworthy. And they buy that shit. Isn't that, it's to me that's and of course they wrap it in we're protecting you. That's what every dictator says when they censor someone. They say we're protecting you from the lies. We're protecting you from propaganda. Well, they're the biggest propagandizers in the world. It's amazing. I mean, that's why 80% of the country lives paycheck to paycheck in the richest country in the world, and half the country can't afford a $500 emergency, is because we're run by those people. Handful of billionaires control the media. Do you think they hire people like Rachel Maddow and Anderson Cooper because they're going to tell the truth about the ruling class and the establishment? Or do you think they're there to manufacture consent for the establishment? And the establishment wants to get rid of Donald Trump, and that's what this is all about. And here's the thing that people don't want to hear and they don't believe, but it's true. This is exactly the same thing. What they're doing to Donald Trump, they would be doing to Bernie Sanders if Bernie Sanders ever had the spine to grab power. But of course, we know that he doesn't. His function is to take revolutionary progressive energy and funnel it back into an anti-worker, pro-war, pro-Wall Street party while gaslighting you about it all along. And they're also against Medicare for all. So, they already did it to Bernie Sanders when he ran. They RussiaGated him. They said Putin was supporting him. He did, instead of debunking it and pushing back, he agreed with it. He RussiaGated himself. And they said his followers were misogynists, were sexist, and were violent. They already did that. What they're doing to Trump, they're trying to make his political movement illegal. They're saying they're the one. So that's exactly what they said Trump was going to do to his political opponents, that he was going to criminalize them. That's what Cornel West says made Donald Trump a fascist, was that he criminalizes his political opponents and threatens them with jail. Well, that's exactly what they did to Donald Trump. And it's plain to see that they keep doing this over and over and over, one case more flimsy than the next. So this is what they would be doing to Bernie Sanders if Bernie Sanders actually had the nutsack to grab power and then institute a progressive agenda of Medicare for all, a living wage, and ending the wars and investing that money back here. But of course, we know that he'll never do that. And the reason why is because he's cowardly and he won't stand up to power and will never, ever use his leverage. He won't ever ask his followers to do anything. He won't ever ask his followers to get in the streets and protest the establishment or even write letters. He won't ask them to do anything to pressure Joe Biden or the Democratic establishment to do anything. Remember how it was supposed to be a huge win that Bernie Sanders was going to be the chairman of the banking committee? It was worth it, him selling out to Joe Biden, because he's going to be the chairman of the banking committee.
I find it absolutely hilarious that you have two people at one point during the civil rights movement being on opposite sides, and then Bernie having the audacity to call Joe Biden his good friend. Joe Biden, who was working with Republican segregationists, most notably Strom Thurmond, who is, if none of you know who Strom Thurmond is, just Google him up, look him up. That man is as well pro KKK as much as it can get, and that was a person that Joe Biden gave a eulogy for. That's the same Joe Biden who said, "I don't want my white kids to be with black kids." He was against busing and desegregation. So as Bernie,
he said he didn't want his kids to grow up in a racial jungle.
Yeah, there we go. So, but the issue though is, and even after all of this, as soon as Joe Biden makes his announcement, Bernie just goes ahead, automatically endorses him, and that's it. And then the DNC is playing this game. We all see it right now, where Joe Biden's their incumbent. They're ignoring Marianne Williamson. They're ignoring RFK Jr.'s campaign. And I've already made my decision. I'm going to vote independent and third party. But this election cycle is showing us that the DNC offers nothing new. And look, this isn't to make fun. I'm kind of going to make fun, but this is not to make fun of the current people who are running in power. But when you have a dynamic duo such as these individuals, you have.
Oh my God!
Yes, hold on. This is absolutely everyone. If you haven't seen this,
abuse. This is not only abuse of the American public. This is abuse of these two guys.
Exactly.
It's really sad to what they're doing to them.
Here, everyone. If you don't believe Jimmy Dore, if you don't believe Jimmy Dore or myself, listen for yourselves.
And now I'm standing next to the president again, next to a collapsed bridge here, and he needs to commit to work with the governor and the delegation to make sure that we get this fixed.
Delegation
fast as well too. This is a president that is committed.
Hold on, Jimmy. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead. Continue.
I'm standing next to a collapsed bridge. What a perfect description of Joe Biden. Standing next to a collapsed bridge.
Well, the thing is, Joe Biden is probably wondering where are my Doritos, or I want to eat some ice cream or something of that nature. But then also you have people like Dianne Feinstein, who, again, half her face is paralyzed, gone for 3 months, and when questioned by a freaking reporter, she says, "I've always been here. I've had 4 family members suffer from dementia and Alzheimer's." The way Joe Biden walks, the way Dianne Feinstein carries herself or looks around, I've seen that behavior before. I've seen that body language. They're not all there. And then you have Nancy Pelosi, who's doing the most insider trading. Her daughter is one of Dianne Feinstein's caretakers. So the reason why Dianne Feinstein is still around is so that Nancy could still have power. I mean, we are ruled by sociopaths, and it is incredible seeing people waking up. 50% of the population identifies itself as independent, but I do want to see if there could be a third party movement. But already we're seeing the DNC play the same game. I mean, will there be a voter turn? Will there be at least some kind of interaction? Maybe Cornel West can potentially create a real third party movement with the Green Party and the coalition that he's building with Chris Hedges. I mean, is it possible to save the sinking ship? I know Chris Hedges has written numerous articles and books about the downfall of the republic and our economy and the way our government is working. You've had him on your show as well, but is there a possibility where maybe it's this election year, or is that just a fool's dream at this point?
No, I think, the biggest voting block is the independents, right? So like it's around 27% Democrat, 27% Republican. People consider themselves Republican Democrat, but the biggest voting block, is the people who don't vote. So I don't know if you can consider them a voting block. Maybe they don't vote because they know they don't have anything to vote for. But the biggest voting block is the independents, right? 42% of Americans, I think, consider themselves independent. So yeah, I think that he's actually a real threat, which is why you have the unions already endorsing Joe Biden because they're corrupt.
Oh God,
they're corrupt. That's a corrupt move. That's not that. Those aren't unions looking out for that's a corrupt move. There's certainly better people in the race that would represent unions better. And this is a primary, and you go ahead and the guy just crushed the railroad workers union. So can I just get back to, I think the reason why things are even worse than they were before is because when Bernie Sanders ran in 2016, he showed that half the Democratic primary voters, half the people who call themselves Democrats who voted in Democratic primaries were ready to overthrow the party. They wanted to get rid of the corporate control of the party. And when Bernie tucked his tail and gave his support to Hillary Clinton for absolutely nothing because of Donald Trump, he got nothing for his support. Nothing. He got absolutely nothing. He didn't get super delegates out. He didn't get fossil fuel money out of the DNC or corporate money or anything. He didn't nothing. He got nothing.
Mhm.
And he did it again with Joe Biden. And so again, he doesn't have his followers do anything. He doesn't ask them to help put pressure on politicians or to organize, to get in the streets, to go on a demonstrate. Nothing. They do nothing. And so now the people who my question is, where are those people who were Bernie Sanders supporters in 2016 who used to go to Bernie Sanders rallies and chant CNN sucks? That's all been wiped away because Bernie Sanders has taken those people and told them you have to vote for Joe Biden and the Democrats, and they're better than the Republicans, and one party is better than the other. Well, if there's anything I've learned by studying recent history is that the Democrats are in fact not the lesser of two evils. Barack Obama was not the lesser of two evils. They wouldn't have let John McCain kick 5.1 million people, families, not people, out of their houses while he made sure the bankers kept their bonuses. They wouldn't have let John McCain take us from 2 wars to 7. They wouldn't have let John McCain drop more bombs than George Bush, which is what Barack Obama did. But they would let Barack Obama do it, just like they wouldn't let George Herbert Walker Bush pass NAFTA, but they would let Bill Clinton do it. And then they would let Bill Clinton gut welfare while he exploded the prison population and deregulated Wall Street, which would crash our economy within 10 years. And who would it hurt the worst? Black and brown people. So they wouldn't let George Herbert Walker, they wouldn't let Republicans do this shit. They wouldn't let Donald Trump right now saber rattle with 2 fucking nuclear powers at the same time. But they will let Joe Biden do it. And the media goes along because it's owned by the exact same people. And nobody in the country knows about the Durham report because the news media doesn't say it's a story. And so if MSNBC and CNN and Fox News, if they don't say the Durham report's a story, then it isn't a story. I tell people about it. I go to comedy clubs every night of my life, and I tell people about the Durham, and they go, "What's this now?" And I go, "The Durham report." They go, "Where did you hear about this?" That's what people say. Where did you hear about it?
Well, you did your own research, so it's a thing called reading.
like they pretend like it's a made up thing. They don't have any idea what they're doing. They have no idea that RussiaGate, because whatever the news media decides is a story, and that's because they want to manufacture consent. And that's the beauty. People forget that that's what they're there for. That's why Rachel Maddow gets paid $100,000 a day. Her new contract, she makes $100,000 a day. So why do you think someone gets paid that money to tell the truth about the establishment? No, the establishment pays you $100,000 a day to lie and to push war and to shit on revolutionaries and progressives and people pushing back against the establishment, which is exactly what she does. So I put all of that on Bernie Sanders and the people who were followers of Bernie Sanders who make absolutely no demands on him. They make absolutely no demands on him, and they get mad at people like me because we're a country of adult children of alcoholics. We don't get mad at the guy who's fucking us. We get mad at the guy who points out that someone is screwing us. That's exactly what my show is all about. People, it's this sideways anger at Jimmy Dore for pointing out that the Democratic Party is just like the Republican Party. In fact, it's worse right now because Donald Trump didn't start 2 wars. He wasn't doing any of this stuff. And by the way, Joe Biden's completing his wall in Arizona. So that's the thing about Bernie Sanders and AOC and those people. By the way, they all voted for the war. They all voted for the CARES Act, the largest upward transfer of wealth in human history, and they got peanuts for it. And that's not my words. That's what AOC called it. She called what they got in the CARES Act peanuts. But they all voted for it. So this, again, having Bernie Sanders and people like AOC elected in the Democratic Party, it gives people false hope that there's somebody in government actually fighting for you, and you can keep voting for Democrats and it's going to change things. Well, I'm here to tell you, it ain't going to ever change things. And yes, this is the year for a third party. And I just hope, I'm going to be lobbying Cornel West very hard to expand his message and to stop calling his political enemies fascists, because they're all fascists. Joe Biden's a much bigger fascist than Donald Trump. And I'll debate anybody on that.
Well, the thing is, there's something I want to point out. And again,
the reason why black and brown people are locked up at much higher rates in this country isn't because of Donald Trump's fascism. It's because of Joe Biden's.
Well, I'm glad that you brought up the fact that, again, under Joe Biden's administration, we're still seeing a lot of Trump's foreign and domestic policy still being carried on. Case in point, in 2020, and we're very grateful for the first time you helped us out. But when we first got censored, Hardlands Media was censored and demonetized, deplatformed shadow banned for like 6 months. And there was a real close point to where, you know, Daniel and I, my colleague, fellow co-founder, Daniel Upker, where we could have shut up shop, like, again, wrapped it all up. The shop would have been done. Hardlands Media, I wouldn't be speaking to you right now. And since then, you know, we've been able to recover just a little bit. And then besides that, we got hit 7 more times. Now, thankfully, because of our audience and allies like yourself, all across independent media, we've been able to somewhat stay on this platform, but also diversify. But the censorship's gotten worse. You know, and of course, habeas corpus was removed under Barack Obama, but since then, habeas corpus gone. The kids are still in cages. Rob Reiner, are you going to get in your car and get those kids out of the cages? That's what he tweeted out as soon as Biden was elected into office. Rob Reiner, everyone's favorite liberal, everyone's favorite fathead, tweeted out these words: "Hang on, kids, we're going to get you out of those cages," which never happened. I don't think he got in his little Hollywood truck and helped out the kids. Since then, we've gone into further war. We're seeing financial instability. Things have gotten progressively worse. And I think a lot of people right now suffer from that Trump derangement syndrome, that he was the end all be all bad guy. He is not the villain. The villain, the architects, are the people in power still, the people who have been in power for 20 plus years, who have been working with the corporations, Wall Street executives, the top 1%, to censor, silence, and remove anyone that would be considered a threat to them. And even now, under Joe Biden's quote unquote democracy, under his administration, where the soul is returned back to America, we're still seeing whistleblowers being prosecuted. Julian Assange is being threatened to be extradited here to the United States. And even then, we're seeing American citizens ranging across the political spectrum, yourself included, Jimmy, on a Ukrainian kill list. How the hell does that happen? If this happened under Trump, people would be foaming at the mouth. And I've always said this too, to all the pink pussy hat people who were screaming that they'd be flooding the streets 24/7 if Roe v. Wade was destroyed under Trump. I don't see them now. And in Chicago, Jimmy, from 2016 through 2020, I got to rage out here for a second. Every time the activists, the social justice warrior industrial complex people would be starting somewhere in the middle of downtown Chicago, and then march their happy selves all the way to Trump Tower, but across the river into a caged area that was set up by the police. Malcolm X would never do that. Dr. King would never do that. Nobody would ever do that. And this is where we're at now. And all these quote unquote people who made a career of themselves saying they're going to resist Trump, they're silent. And I have to come down to the conclusion that they never believed a single goddamn word that they said. Or am I missing something?
Aren't you surprised, Kit, that the people who were the biggest Bernie Sanders supporters are now screaming you have to keep voting Democrat?
Or follow orders. Just you have to keep following orders. And
isn't it? I thought we all agreed. I thought that's what we all agreed, that was a failed strategy. We got the Justice Democrats elected, and they vote to they're war pigs, and they won't. And they turn on their own supporters, like the activists for Medicare for All. They turned on healthcare supporters. They tried to discredit us and undermine us. We're the people who helped them get elected. And then they turned on us. And then half the goddamn stupid, quote unquote, progressive media defended them.
Well, when you have stuff like this, again, shout out to Revolutionary Blackout Network, good friends of the show. Union leadership that has betrayed the rank and file. These are the same people who also supported Bernie Sanders. All of them endorsing Joe Biden. Even National Nurses United.
I know.
Where
have the nurses been? What have they done to lobby Joe Biden to give us the public option? That's something he ran on. Not only are nurses not lobbying the president and pressuring him to pass Medicare for All, they're not even bringing up his own campaign promises, which is a public option. So it just shows you that the reason why there's no left movement in America, it's because unions aren't left anymore. Unions are part of the professional managerial class in America. And the left in America is represented by white collar executives. It's not represented by blue collar workers like it is in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
And what they lobby for is, they don't lobby for minimum wages or Medicare for All. What the left in America wants is, they want more representation of marginalized groups on corporate boards Well, I think what would actually help people more is if we had a living wage. If we could end those wars, invest that money back here, give people social services, infrastructure, healthcare. I think that would help them more. But that's all the fucking professional managerial class cares about is diversity, equity, and inclusion. So these murderous fucking corporations can wag around this virtue signal that, look, we're good people, because at Raytheon we're good because we have black and brown and gay people helping murder the world.
And then, of course, when you have sycophants in corporate media, I mean, very rarely do you see them get challenged. And to which I have to say, I mean, this video is priceless, but it reveals truly where the liberal mindset is at, especially the quote unquote resistance fighters or people like Rachel Maddow, who made a profit off of basically keeping this country divided. Shout out to Max Blumenthal. I know you've seen this video, but we have to show it to everyone, because this is the face of when a corporate talent, not journalist, meets a real journalist.
Yeah.
And members of Congress who were sympathetic.
Rachel, this speech is boring and paranoid. Can you explain why you promoted the Steele? Why did you promote the Steele dossier, which has been proven to be a lie? Why did you promote the lie of Russian bounties?
Come on, let's go.
Can you ever be held accountable for the lies you told Americans for years and years and years? You lied to Americans for years.
Let's go.
Silence is violence, Rachel.
You're out. You're out.
Let's go.
There you go. You want my badge?
Thank you.
And again, what I find hilarious is that people are screaming out, "Oh, shame on you! How dare you! How dare you! Shame on you! Shame on you!" Well, okay. What about the justice for yourself, Jimmy, or other people that have been put on an enemy list by a foreign power? If this happened under Trump, I mean, people would be upset. People would be raging at the system. I mean, is there any point in time to where, again, we could maybe get some kind of accountability? Because I, for one, I still can't believe it that I'm seeing people like yourself, everyone who's either Republican, Libertarian, progressive, socialist. I mean, average people, actors, comedians on a foreign hit list. How did we get to this? Any other president, I mean, people might have said something. If this happened under Trump, people would definitely have said something.
So that's why they have to make Donald Trump out to be a 20-foot Hitler, right? They have to invent him, just like they invented him on television. I remember when celebrities used to go on and defer to him and call him, "Oh, yes, thank you, Mr. Trump." Remember that?
Yeah.
So he's just a creation of the establishment, just like he was before. He is still now. They just created him to be a big monster, because there's no way anybody would vote for a demented Joe Biden. They would be insulted that's what they're being offered. And they were sick of both parties. That's why Donald Trump got elected in the first place, because Republicans were tired of voting for Republicans and Democrats were tired of voting for Democrats. And that's why he won. He beat everybody in the Republican Party because he ran against the Republican Party, just like Bernie Sanders was running against the Democratic Party, which is why they were both filling stadiums in 2016. And then as soon as Bernie stopped running against the Democratic Party and he started stumping for Hillary Clinton, he couldn't fill a fucking gymnasium. And that's a fact. I got the video.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what the question was or what my point was, but here we are.
No, I think it's a fair enough point that you brought up. I mean, it's more of just a commentary on the fact that, you know, you have people like Rachel Maddow who still promote RussiaGate. You have people who still buy the neoliberal lies, hook, line, and sinker. And I'm glad you brought up one other issue here, too, where, again, the numbers are showing that Joe Biden isn't popular. I mean, this recently came out on This Week on ABC News. It's controlled by Disney. That's thankfully going belly up. But my hatred for Disney can wait. Where again, you have people like John Carl. He can't believe his eyes when you look at these numbers.
Let me try to put some oxygen back in the room. Don, I want to try to do another poll. I'll try to do this a little cleaner this time. But a poll from Quinnipiac on a possible Biden-Trump matchup puts Biden at 48%, Trump at 44%. This is a poll, again, taken largely after the indictment. I mean, that's got to make you a little nervous. That's within the margin of error. That is.
So there it is, right there. we're seeing 2020 get repeated again. Biden somewhat in a tie with Donald Trump.
I don't believe that.
We're kind of right back where I don't believe the polling number either. I mean, after all, we saw what happened to quote unquote progressives and other individuals that challenge the Democratic establishment. I mean, we saw that people constantly get dismissed. But in the overall opinion, when you run into people, especially on the street, of people who I've spoken to, there's absolute disdain and lack of trust of Biden. I mean, they're still pushing him as though he is a champion of the working class. He's the one who told railroad workers that you can't strike anymore. And now we're seeing all these celebrities, all these activists, all these quote unquote people who supposedly care about feelings and so much more, saying that Joe Biden is our next best shot. And is the only one that could keep us safe from the evil boogeyman. That's not it at all. I always keep telling people, you are going to be voting for the same people who are going to screw you over and over again. So I kind of want to round this back up to the fact of, dude, will there be a chance for somebody like Dr. Cornel West to actually maybe make it to the debate stage, to actually do that? Because I know here in Illinois, I mean, you're from Chicago. You know for a fact Illinois is notorious for political corruption and votes disappearing. I just see a system being pushed and set up that will stop that voice. And I do wish Dr. Cornel West all the success. Same thing for the libertarians too, to actually make it to that stage to challenge somebody like Trump or whoever the Republican nominee, and Biden, or if not that, whoever the Democrats do pick. I mean, can there be that chance to happen? Because we've seen this before, and the establishment quickly try and silence it.
Yeah, I think it could certainly happen, no doubt about it. I think Cornel West could do it. I'm a big supporter of Cornel West. I like that he has integrity, and he's willing to grow. He's willing to learn when the facts change, his opinion changes, right? When he learns new things, he adjusts. He's not a blind ideologue. And so that's why I'm going to, keep lobbying him to have more inclusive language, to organize along class lines, to reach out to Republicans and libertarians and all those types of people. Those are a worker in America. I think I would encourage him to reach out to every worker in America, right? Because he could represent them far better than anybody else. And so we've been brainwashed to think our neighbor is our enemy, and someone who votes for a different politician is your enemy. That is bullshit. That is exactly what the establishment wants you to think. That wants you to blame your neighbor for the economic pain you're feeling instead of the oligarchy and the failed system that they preside over, and while they extract wealth upward, and they have their pawns in Congress to do it and the White House. So what do you call? I like to tell people, America's the richest country on the face of the earth has ever seen. What do you call a system that takes that richest country the face of the earth has ever seen and render 80% of its workers living paycheck to paycheck? Half the country can't afford a $400 emergency. What do you call that system? You call that a failed system. So we're in a failed system. And I would hope that Cornel could also articulate that. I bet he can better than me for sure. So, and he has been for a long time. So I think that's a message that would resonate with people. I think people are desperate. I think people voted for Donald Trump in the first place because they were desperate. I like to tell the story of I interviewed a Waffle House cook from Virginia named Nick Smith on my show in the 2016 election. I asked him, why is he voting for Donald Trump? And he said, Jimmy, we all know that Donald Trump's a loudmouth Yankee. He should have had his ass kicked a long time ago. But we're desperate, and he's offering us something. And so there you go. They got nowhere to go. And that's why and so the Democrats and Republicans both realize this, which is why they what they're doing to Donald Trump, they did to him, right? The Durham report came out and said that RussiaGate was a complete hoax. Where are all the Republicans screaming about that on television at the top of their lungs? They're not doing that. And where are they standing up for this obvious political prosecution of Joe Biden and the establishment's political enemy? Which isn't that sound crazy to say that Donald Trump is is the establishment's enemy, but it is true. The donor class hates him and they want him out. And that's why all this is being allowed to happen.
Well, I mean, especially during the infamous CNN town hall that was hosted by Catelyn Collins on CNN, where Trump sounds even a hell of a lot more reasonable than somebody like Nikki Haley, who wants ongoing war. And Trump, whether you like him or not, was the first to say, I just want people to stop dying. I can make peace happen in 24 hours. Now, I don't know if he could really pull that off, but when Trump is the most reasonable person in the room and wants to stop a conflict in this ridiculous war that's been taking billions of dollars from, again, the U.S. funding it. We could do Medicare for all. We could do student debt forgiveness. Trump comes off as the most reasonable person in a sea of warmongers and tyrants that want to see, I guess, more profit as they lead us to the extinction of the human species. I mean, we both saw that CNN town hall. I was kind of floored in regards to how well Donald Trump handled himself with CNN. And now there's this quick dismissal of, oh, we're going to indict Trump. We're going to indict Trump. And thankfully, there's a platform like your show. And then we have other individuals who are speaking out. But anyone that's calling this out is immediately censored. I mean, look what they're trying to do now to Tucker Carlson. I mean, Fox News is eventually going to end up like CNN because they're going after the one person that actually made their network pretty relevant.
Of course.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
Is it what a switch, right? That let's let me remind people why you get fired in corporate news. You don't get fired for lying. Okay, you get fired if you tell the truth. That's why they fired Phil Donahue, because he was telling the truth about the war, especially about the war. And so he was telling the truth about the war, and they fired him, and they said for low ratings. And then a memo was leaked that said the reason why was because he was anti-war and it was bad for business. And this was after they had made him, for every what they considered anti-war voice, he had to have 2 or 3 pro-war people on as guests. That was already in the contract, right? He already had to do that. And then they fire him anyway. And they said it was for low ratings. Turns out he had the highest rated show at the time. And so then they did the same thing to Jesse Ventura because he was going to tell the truth about the war. Mm-hmm. And then they didn't even put his show on the air, right? Because they knew what was going to happen. They gave him $1 million or a couple $1 million contract. And then they fired Ashley Banfield for the same thing. So we know that you get fired for not for lying about the Iraq. And all the people who lied about the Iraq war and the Libyan war and the Syrian war and currently Ukraine, they all get rewarded with big fat contracts. And all the people who pushed RussiaGate, which was a big hoax, that they all get rewarded with big fat contracts. So you get fired from corporate news for telling the truth. And that's what Tucker Carlson started doing. So he wasn't always like this. Tucker Carlson had some an awakening, and Mike can point to when they they already protested him as a white supremacist and all that stuff, and they took away his advertisers. They did scare his advertisers away. So he doesn't have, I asked him because the reason why Tucker Carlson and I started first working together or talking to each other was because I was covering Syrian war and how they were lying about the Syrian war and lying about the gas attacks. And we were working with Aaron Mate and we were debunking those gas attacks in real time. And they still say that I'm a conspiracy theorist because I debunked the bullshit gas attacks in Syria. They still says that on my Wikipedia page. It's funny. Anyway, but so I started working with him. And I remember I asked him, I said, hey, why are you allowed to tell the truth about the Syrian war? No one else is doing that on television. And they don't. And he said, I go, aren't your advertisers going to pull? And he said, I don't have any advertisers. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, not besides Mike the Pillow Guy and catheter commercials. and I looked and it's like, you're right. They took away all his, his mainstream, Coca-Cola and Chevy and Bank of America. They didn't. And I said, well, how do you stay on the air? And he said, I stay on the air because I have such high ratings that cable companies have to pay Fox News to carry his show, right? And since it was the highest rated news show, they got paid a lot of money from cable, like from Spectrum and AT&T and from all the cable providers. They have to pay to carry those shows. They have to pay Fox. And the way they pay you is by the number of your views. And so he had such high views. They still made a ton of money with Tucker Carlson. But then even he told too many truths about Ukraine, and then the final straw was when he brought on RFK Jr. He brought on RFK Jr. to tell the truth about how big pharma corrupts the news reporting. The number one news host is telling you how advertisers control the news. And he did it in a very dramatic way that really landed. And RFK Jr. told me a story about when he used to be friends with Roger Ailes, who was the guy who started Fox News and built it into what it is. And they were family friends or something. And so he was telling Roger Ailes all the stuff that he had learned about vaccines. And Roger Ailes says, I agree with you. He said, but I can't put you on TV. He said, and if one of my news anchors did, I'd have to fire them because 70% of my advertising comes from big pharma. And
Wow.
that's exactly what happened. He told the truth about the Ukraine war and Zelensky, which made them want to fire him in the first place. But there was a split inside the family, Murdoch family. And then when he did that was it. It was all over.
Wow.
So my point is, he got fired for telling the truth. And the reason why he was able to tell the truth was because they took his handcuffs off, which is the money he got from his advertisers. So that's why he's able to be doing the best reporting now. It's amazing, right? Like now he's telling you the truth about Ukraine. He's telling you the truth about COVID and the government and corporate power coming together and squashing people. And Jon Stewart's the guy hanging medals on Nazis and lying about and pushing propaganda about vaccines and big pharma propaganda. And he'll never tell you the truth about Ukraine. Isn't that interesting? Because Jon Stewart was my hero. I still look up to him. He still did with the greatest shows in the history. And but look at him and Stephen Colbert. It's like now Jon Stewart should wear the bow tie because he's the tool of the establishment and he's doing it willingly. And of course he gets nominated for whatever the fuck they still nominate him for. He put in anyway. It's really sad. I don't know John personally, so that's why I'm free to talk like this. Like if I already knew him and he was nice to me at one point, I probably wouldn't feel good talking about him like this. But I think he has a big responsibility, and I think he's funnier than me, he's smarter than me, and he's certainly richer than me and more accomplished. So I would like to lobby him to start telling the truth, man. Don't let Tucker Carlson embarrass you by doing way better news than you are. And that's exactly what's happened. It's amazing. Tucker Carlson's the only one that even comes close to telling you the truth about certain things, COVID being one of them, vaccines another, and the Ukraine, the biggest things in our life. And RussiaGate, too, by the way, the biggest stories of our life. That the corporate media has ubiquitously gotten them wrong, and half of YouTube too. I would say 85-90% of YouTube has gotten wrong too. They all got COVID wrong.
Well, the thing about COVID as well, especially with the pandemic, is, you mentioned how an interview that you did with RFK Jr. was taken down. You ran it by the heads of YouTube. Kim Iverson did an interview with RFK Jr. and that was taken down. And then, while it wasn't related to the pandemic, Mike Tyson had Mike Tyson's podcast, Hot Boxing, had a 2 hour, maybe 2.5 hour long interview with RFK Jr. and it had to deal with what happened to his uncle JFK and his father RFK in regards to the CIA. And that video was taken down, and quote unquote, it was up there for about 2 years, 2 long years. It's been up there. And YouTube's reason for taking it down now, and shout out to Matt Orfala who shared it on Twitter. They said it violated community guidelines. How did it violate community? It seems like this whole thing is, and especially now too, because this is still a developing story. But Joe Rogan even called out this guy Peter Hotz, this doctor, saying, okay, hey, debate if you are so against RFK Jr. and saying that I'm promoting all this misinformation, debate him on my show. And he was recently, he was confronted. I don't really approve of stuff like this, but it's already out there on social media. Well, people, the story's still developing, but people are asking him, hey, why don't you debate RFK Jr.? And there's this censorship, there's this silence that's happening. Your video with RFK Jr. was censored and silenced, and you talk to the people directly at YouTube. I envy you for talking to somebody from YouTube. I don't even know what that's like to even speak to somebody.
No, I didn't. They didn't. I only put up one. I did 2 interviews with RFK Jr. and I put one of them up on YouTube and the other one I didn't. I just put it up on Rumble. But But so they didn't censor me on that. But what I did do was when I did my interview with Dr. Robert Malone, and you alluded to this, was I did it. I didn't do it live on YouTube. I did it on a private stream, and then I sent it to YouTube, and I asked them, hey, I don't want to violate anybody's community standards, and so could you look over this video and let me know if there's something I have to take out, because I don't want to bring anything that you would consider misinformation. I want to be a good boy on YouTube, and I don't want to. And so they did. They looked it over and they sent it back, and they go, no, this is good. And you could have pushed me over with a feather, man. So they still suppressed the shit out of that video. It's very hard to find on YouTube, even for me, and it's on my channel. It's very hard to find. It's still got 700,000, almost 800,000 views. Wow. And so I was like, wow, well, I don't have to worry about getting kicked off YouTube anymore. Whenever I do something that I think is going to be controversial, I'll just send it to them first. So the next thing, we did another interview we did an RFK Jr. interview. And so I sent it to them, and I was like, hey, could you check this out? I want to make sure it's okay, right? I don't want to violate anybody's standards. I don't want to be accused of misinformation. And they go, no, we can't look at it before you publish it. And I go, well, why? And they go, well, that's just our policy. And I'm like, but you're going to look at it after I publish it, right? And they go, yeah. I mean, for sure you're going to, right? And they're like, yeah. I go, so why wouldn't you want to do it first? So then we don't ever put up misinformation. What's the difference if you look at it now? It's the same man hours to look at it before I post it as it is look at it after I post. And now we're, quote unquote, aren't we being more responsible in protecting the viewer from misinformation before I put it up? And of course, they had no answers for any of these things. Wow. And so, of course, they're going to send, so they're going back and taking down RFK Jr. interviews with Theo Vaughn and all those other things too. And it's like, there's the old saying, who you're not allowed to criticize rules over you. I'm probably butchering it, but that's the sentiment, is if whoever you're not allowed to criticize, that's who you're actually being ruled by. And so we know we're not actually ruled by the government. We're ruled by corporations and billionaires who control the government. So they decide what we're allowed to criticize and what we're not allowed to criticize. So like, for instance, on YouTube, you're not allowed to say anything of you. We weren't anyway. I'm sure, but we weren't allowed to say anything about COVID or the vaccines or that went against the WHO's recommendations.
Which has now been reversed. By the way, YouTube, if you're listening to my handlers out there, the World Health Organization reversed that decision now. COVID's no longer a threat. But anyways, didn't mean to cut you off, Jimmy. Go on, continue.
So I'm like, well, why would who the hell is the WHO? Who the hell are these? I didn't vote for them. They're not elected. And who controls them? Well, you look at who their funders are, and the number one funder of the WHO is Bill Gates. So, and I have, so now, oh no, I'm not allowed to criticize the vaccines because Bill Gates had invested $55 million in the vaccines, and then he made $500 million on those. And as soon as he cashed out his money on the vaccines, he started denigrating, insulting, and shitting on the vaccines. He started saying things like, well, they're not infection blocking, they're not long lasting. We need to get this new thing, which is a nasal inhaler that is infection blocking. And I looked into what that was, and he's funding the development of that. So we're being ruled now. And so we're not allowed to criticize, when we're not allowed to criticize the WHO, it's really, we're not allowed to criticize Bill Gates. And so that's who rules over us. It's a handful of billionaires, and I can draw a direct line from us being allowed to criticize Bill Gates, the COVID policy. I can draw a direct line to Bill Gates. That's who's ruling over us. Big Pharma and Bill Gates, handfuls of billionaires. That's what we're living in. And it's this thing of the now people are waking up to the Bilderbergs. People are waking up to the WEF. And I remember there used to be an insult to people who were onto the fact that there was a neoliberal world order run by the banks and the military industrial complex and corporations. They would say, oh, when do they have these meetings? And George Carlin would say, you don't have to have a meeting when you're interests coincide and collide, right? You don't have to have but they do have meetings. What I would say is, you want to see meetings of the oligarchs planning out how to rule the world. It's called a session of Congress. Do you think those people are in there writing laws on our behalf? They're in there writing laws on the behalf of their billionaire donors, and they control both parties, which is why the country's in the position it is, why we can send $100 billion to Ukraine at the snap of a finger, while people are living under every bridge here in this country. And that was enough money to end homelessness 4 times over. They won't even fix the bridges people are living under in this country. That's how corrupt this goddamn this country is. It isn't a country. It's a corporation. It's an oligarchy. And that's another joke about January 6th, that people think that was the threat to democracy. Your democracy was taken decades ago, you fucking child. When are you going to get upset that corporations took over your government, which is why workers haven't had a raise since 1980, and we have 1,000 military bases around the world, and no other country has anything like that. And our empire is ending. The government is in bed with corporations to crush workers' strikes, and then send money out to the most corrupt countries in the world, like Ukraine, for a proxy war, for fossil fuel companies. That's all this is. We blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. Everybody knows we're the world's terrorists, and we do it for economic gain, just like we've known forever. And where are the people who are supposed to stand up against this stuff? They're all afraid of big bad Donald Trump, because they had to make a game show host out to be a 20-foot tall Hitler to get you to vote for this bullshit, because they knew people were done in 2016, and they're done again. And that's why I'm so glad that Cornel West is not running in the Democratic Party, and I'm glad he's running third party, because they're going to cheat Robert RFK. I won't allow myself to get excited about RFK Jr.'s candidacy, because I told him on my show, they're going to rig it against you. They're never going to let you. The guy says that the CIA is the people who offed his uncle and offed him, and you think
offed his father, yeah.
You think offed his father, and you think they're going to let? So anyway, I really wish he would have ran third party. It would be a lot easier to get excited about it. But now we have Cornel West. And so, again, I'm going to be lobbying him to open up his message and to reach everybody. And I think he's going to do it. I really, so, the goal here isn't, if he could win straight up, that would be fantastic. And I actually think that's possible. But if he ran the right campaign.
Exactly.
But I think a very realistic goal is to get him to poll between 5 and 10%. And if he polls between 5 and 10%, then he can become a kingmaker. And then he could say, hey, these are my list of demands, and I'll instruct my 10% of my people to vote for you, and you'll win the election. So which is it? Who wants to give people health care? Who wants to end the wars? Who wants to give us a living wage? Who wants to end authoritarianism inside our own country, right? Who wants to invest? So, and whoever, have your list of 5 demands. And I don't care if a Democrat or a Republican gives me Medicare for all. I don't care if a Democrat or a Republican ends the wars and invest that money back here. I don't care if a Democrat or Republican passes a minimum wage. The last progressive president we had was Richard Nixon.
Don't tell that to the Vote Blue No Matter Who crowd.
Yeah.
They'll probably get triggered by that.
He was. They developed OSHA underneath him. They developed EPA, all that stuff that happened under Nixon. So it doesn't matter who. It can happen. So he can get. So that's what I'm hoping he does. I think that's his game. I had on Chris Hedges on my show just yesterday, and he worked with Ralph Nader when he ran. And he said, yes, that was his goal, was to get a high enough percentage in the polls where you could become a kingmaker. And they could do it. So now Bernie Sanders could have done that in 2016, and he could have done it last time too, but he won't ever use his leverage ever.
Let's see. So, Jimmy, and I do appreciate the time that you've given us, because I know the show would be for like an hour, but I want to say I got just a few statements from our audience. Definitely want to say, first of all, they love your show, but also you have your tour, COVID Lies Are Funny, that's happening. So I know you've got a couple of tours that are happening, and I want to at least give a chance for you to promote that. And also overall, what when you're on tour, the audience interaction, what's the makeup of the audience? Has it changed much since you been on the road? I mean, obviously you have a lot of people who want to turn you into a villain, or they've been also going after RBN, Hard Lens, etc., because we're not falling in line with the vote blue no matter who narrative. But the audiences, what is the overall makeup? I mean, is it the remnants of the Bernie Sanders movement, or is it also other people as well? Because you've mentioned you've interviewed and spoke to Republicans and libertarians, conservatives. I mean,
What is that you're asking? What's the makeup of my audience that comes out to see me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm really happy because, I've seen a lot of comedians get trapped in a position where they don't like their audience. They become famous for a certain reason, and it's not what they want. Like, I don't want to say who they are, right? So I don't want to mention it, but and I'm glad that I really like my audience. My audience are the type of people I want to talk to after a show. I would like to have a drink with. And when I used to see George Carlin, I used to go see George Carlin here in Los Angeles, and I remember his audience was so diverse, right? There were hippies there were guys in 3-piece business suits, there were black, there were white, there were old, young. It was all different types of people that were there. And I was like, that's quite an accomplishment that you can get these people from all walks of life. You're not just this narrow kind of a niche. He really had a broad support, and I always envied that, and I always wanted that for my comedy. But at that time I wasn't selling tickets, and now I am, and it's similar, right? I wouldn't say it's exactly the same, but I would say it's very similar. There's hippies, there's old time hippies that are perplexed by the Democrats' embrace of censorship, right? There's conservatives, there's libertarians. I had a table full of Hasidic Jews pay to come see my show in Philadelphia, and I'm telling you, and there's all kinds of people that come. So it's a real broad swath of America, and I'm really a lot of blue collar people, and I'm really proud of that.
And so one other thing here too, because we got a couple of statements from the audience. First of all, Colin Radix Carter says, as a unionized teacher, the AFT does not represent me. Where are the demands of leadership made before endorsing them? I mean, obviously
no demands, absolutely no demands.
None other. A couple people saying Jimmy Dore, please still run, which you have said on our show, hey, I don't want to do that, which is you made that extremely clear already. So if anyone hasn't seen that already, please check out our previous interview that we did with Jimmy Dore way back in the day. We had another person who wrote, Jimmy Dore, when are you coming back to the state of Florida? They want you back there in Florida. Perhaps maybe
definitely. I'll be coming back to Orlando and Tampa, and I'm going to try to get down to what is it, Fort Myers. So that should be coming hopefully in the fall or early winter.
All right, fantastic. And then we also have one other, I'm going to take up one other statement from one of our audience members. He's a good friend of the show. His name is Roger Meadows. And I encourage people who are watching him to please follow him on Twitter. He's been the one that actually introduced us to be talking about citizen ballot initiatives. He's also been integral in introducing us to the New York Healthcare Act, fighting for Medicare for all at the state level, because I guess that's how we're going to get Medicare for all. The same way we're kind of getting cannabis nationwide, it's going to have to be fought at the state level. He says, Jimmy, looking forward to your visit to New York City. I will see if I can get tickets. Looking forward to having a short dialogue with you about a response to a chat that ticked a lot of people off, ticked a lot of black people off in regards to how you reacted when a chatter asked you about what your thought on Lee and Bush's reparations plan is. Yeah, he wants to talk to you about that and talk to you about that issue. So, I mean, Roger Meadows, he's a good friend of the show. So if you haven't met him, he'll probably talking to you nonstop about state ballot initiatives.
Yeah, that did rub people the wrong way. Yeah, my whole point is, I think I actually support reparations, right? So I think that would be first of all, what a boon to the economy. Actually put money in the pockets of people, right?
Mhm.
Workers. And we certainly, obviously, CARES Act proved it, that they could print $5 trillion anytime they feel like it and put it in their pockets.
Mhm.
So I think but I just find it to be, that it's such a it's not, I don't think it's ever going to happen. It's like, it's such a divisive issue. And I think there's things that can happen that we should get behind, like things that would help everybody, Medicare for all, living wage, free college, and the mass incarceration, stuff like that.
Mhm. Fair
Uh,
enough. Fair enough. And
that's my position.
so, all right. And so, Jimmy Dore, as always, you've been speaking truth to power. And it's always a pleasure to have you on. We're looking forward to seeing your show in Chicago. I know I'm going to bring a couple of my friends to see your show at Zany's here in the city of Chicago. Is there anything you're looking forward to? I think final question. Is there anything you're looking forward to when you visit your hometown? Is there any spots or locations that you're looking forward to seeing again? After all, much has changed since Lightfoot. And yes, that NASCAR thing is still happening, unfortunately, which I still can't believe.
So when is that?
Oh, let me just pull that up here. Chicago NASCAR should be happening sometime in Grant Park. It's, oh my goodness. All right, hang on. Wait, we're gonna find out right now.
Okay,
So
it doesn't matter. I just want to
yeah.
make sure it's not when I'm in town. I hope it's not when I'm in town.
No, it's gonna be happening in July. It's gonna be happening in July, and
Okay, I'll be in Chicago in August.
yeah. Well, I'm not looking forward to it, Jimmy. They're setting it up over there by Grant Park. I hope it's not a disaster, but I see, for some reason my cynical mind is playing in my head where, oh my God, somebody could actually die because that clown leprechaun Lightfoot, who used to dress around, embarrass this city, wrote a horrible Yelp review, setting up a worker to almost lose his job. Thankfully, his bosses stood up for him. She was an absolute clown. I mean, they're still letting our drinking water. Police corruption's happening. Political corruption was still going on. She was as terrible as they can get. I really don't have confidence much in the Brandon Johnson administration.
Well, he doesn't have any big ideas. What's his big idea, Kit? What's his big idea?
Click copy and paste of what the Democratic establishment is going to be, which is why I was kind of secretly wondering if Paul Valls were to win, perhaps we would see a huge infighting with the Chicago Democratic machine. But what I wanted to see and what happened, two different things altogether. And of course, Bernie Sanders went all in for Brandon Johnson, which again, I don't see why we had to bring in a senator from out of state to intervene in an election that really was important. But I guess the city, I don't know. Brandon Johnson, it's mediocre at best. That's the way I could describe it. Plus, we still have those green boxes.
He has a zero track record of accomplishing anything, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And
okay,
he did have a lot of people out of state endorse him. Remnants of the Bernie Sanders movement support him. Yeah. I hope that maybe things could get better, but gentrification's still happening. We still have, again, the fact that we have many of our mental health facilities still shut down. Our schools, especially in predominantly Black and Latino neighborhoods, are shut down. And we still have the ongoing hyper segregation that's in our city that puts Jim Crow to shame. So, you're from Chicago, Jimmy. So when you come back, things are going to be a little different. But I think a case in point, is there anything that you're looking forward to when you come back to the city, though?
Well, always. That's they have some of the best restaurants in the whole country. I love how I take that boat tour every year on the river, right? It's the architectural tour. I take that every time I come back. I love that tour. It's been wonderful. Makes me want to get a boat and live in downtown in Chicago so I could do that every night. I love it. But that's what I'm looking forward to. I just love Chicago.
Mm-hmm. And let's face it, Jimmy, Chicago loves you back. You've been speaking truth to power. I want to thank you so much for your time. I do appreciate it. I hope everyone has a wonderful, wonderful Sunday. And as always, Jimmy, where could people follow you online, social media, and find your show if they haven't found it already?
JimmyDore.com, spelled Dore, D-O-R-E, JimmyDore.com, baby.
Fantastic note to end it on. We're going to be playing an outro song from Jesse Jet's album. Everyone who disagrees with you is an extremist. So everyone sit back, relax. Jimmy Dore, thank you so much for your time. Peace out, folks, and we will be back tomorrow, Monday morning, 9 a.m. Central. My special guest will be Tara Reid, Heartlands Media, live in the morning, 9 a.m. Central. Start your morning right and righteously angry. Jimmy, all the best to you, my friend.
Thanks, pal.
All right.
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days and to still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to save. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe? Were you safe? Were you safe? I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days and to still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to say. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe? Were you safe? Were you safe?
Fresh off the masses, the brand new cancerous growth, who has come here to vie for your vote. Come here to cry at the camps and to mourn at the shore for the bodies that float by the wreck of an immigrant boat. Then it's back to their luxury home, couple security booths and a moat. Couple cigars, little escargot, little booze and a soak. Just breathe in the steam and the smoke. Pink salt, lavender, candles are low. Shit, when you do what you do, gotta lighten the load. And he got a life of his own that's a sight to behold. And it's a lot to control, to decipher the code, or to siphon the soul. The cost of a good night's sleep for the working elite is a bargain, no matter the toll. Worth any wager, and that comes straight from the mouth of the means to the goal that will swallow us whole. Ripe for the picking if you don't mind mold, and you know I don't. Maybe we're pleasantly prone, maybe we're taking a licking, compliantly ticking and ticking and ticking, but never explode. No, I don't deliver the prettiest image, but damn if it isn't an accurate vision of natural fission, of rage at the system and abject heartbreak, patiently waiting for any who will listen. That little blue bird who was watching your words is a federal carrier pigeon, a Langley first. It's a patient observer who hears what it wants and is trained for the worst. Oh, you got nothing to hide. They'll be the ones to decide that after they root through your purse, after they read all your text, after they raid your apartment, confiscate all of its contents, then conjure up evidence out of the air on a wing and a prayer and malicious intelligence nonsense. Any presumption of innocence long since gone, right along with your comforts and constants. Historically, first they will come for the communists. So why in the fuck would I say I'm a communist? Well, it might be I love my community more than the monsters of opulence who are holding us hostage, who are vomiting promises. Might be I'm all done seeing our pensions and benefits harvested. Might be I'm all done watching the populace being disarmed in the guise of an armistice. Watching a woman collapse on the floor who will rise no more. She's wheeled out the door and you're next in line for the pharmacist. If you can get me to vote, it's a hard no confidence. But part of the charm of deception is politics wearing the mask of incompetence. It's all in the art of austerity, darling. It's all in the slide of the providence. Until home is as wide as your cubicle height and is only as deep as your coffin is. Maybe I'm miles away from impatience, aching to break off the head of the snake where the capital lust, reptile brain, and the margin of profit is. Like off with his. Like off with his.
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days and to still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to save. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe?